Ladies and gentlemen, welcome once again to the Packernet Podcast. Let me turn the heater off. That's why the thing was muted to begin with. I am your host and resident panelist, as always, Ryan Schlipp. Check us out online, packernet.com. Find me on Twitter, pack_daddy. So we are going to continue on with the series thing. However, the news and notes stuff is really piling up. And so I'm kind of glad the last offensive position is just tight end. So what I'm going to plan on doing, we're going to have two segments of news. Final segment, we're going to look at the tight end situation. So anywho, with that said, start diving into this stuff here. Couple of little relatively minor news and notesy things. First of all, DJ Chark officially retired, 29 years old, last step foot on an NFL field as a member of the Falcons in 2 2025 preseason games. So another guy retiring, I guess kind of early. It sounded like his career was kind of over. Nobody really seemed to want him. But if you recall, DJ Chark was also one of those guys that, at one point or another, Packer fans were extremely high on. So I don't really mean it as much as like a ha-ha, nana, boo-boo, you're stupid thing. It's important to remember these as we think about, we missed this, we missed that, we missed that. Look, the amount of guys, and it's not even just that, see, you're wrong too, or whatever. It's, look how many of these guys we thought were going to be good and weren't. And somebody else bought stock in that. Somebody else drafted the guy. Somebody else believed in the vision that he is or can be or will be this great football player, blah, blah, blah. He was not. He absolutely was not. It happens. It's just the way she goes. So DJ Chark never materialized, never became that dude, never was the DK Metcalf that a lot of people thought, and the Packers, I can't believe you missed out on him again, and blah, 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 blah. Away he goes. Another kind of interesting storyline that we haven't really talked about in a little while is Christian Wilkins. Very, very, very weird situation with him. ESPN's Adam Schefter reports the free agent defensive tackle Christian Wilkins fully intends to play in 2026 and has been contacted by 26 NFL teams. Schefter notes that Wilkins is still rehabbing the foot injury and ended his Raiders tenure. He has not played since week 4 of 2024. Per Schefter, Wilkins is expected to have a new home as soon as he wants. He set career highs in 2023, notching 58 quarterback pressures and 10 sacks. Hopefully, the foot injury can be resolved soon. Again, very odd. He was supposed, there was a lot of talk about, Wilkins and is he going to come back? And he never found a home. Maybe we can just leave it at he's got this weird lingering foot issue that's just not getting better, and that's been the issue. I don't know. But there was apparently a lot of drama in the locker room, and I don't know. I don't know what happened, but it was very odd, especially the amount of money that they gave him. My first instinct was they regretted it because I think they overpaid him. And so they find some kind of an excuse to get rid of him. Either way, it sparks something because the question for me is, first of all, what is the guy going to cost? Second of all, is he a fit or is he another pass rusher? And not that you could ever have too many, blah, 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 that whole stupid thing. I don't know how much money you really want to invest in another guy like that. However, 30 years old, supposedly some kind of weird locker room stuff, lingering foot issue, hasn't played a full season since 2023. It's possible he's not actually going to cost all that much money. So that's kind of the first thing that stands out. Now, as far as is he sort of an A-gap guy? He's not. He's 6'4", 310, so he could be on the very small side of that if somebody wanted to use him that way, kind of like Hargrave, but he hasn't been. He's a pass rusher, although his run defense grades have been phenomenal. Phenomenal. Over the years, it's been 67, 74, 81, 79, 70, and 80, even in 2024. The pass rush has been good, but not as good as his run defense. So, I don't know. If he's freaking dirt cheap, why not? Put another one in there. Who freaking cares? It's not going to hinder us from going out and drafting a nose tackle. It's just another rotational piece that you put on the line that can get after it, with the extra added benefit of Wilkins not being a liability in the run, against the run, when he's on the field, unlike guys like Wyatt. So I wouldn't necessarily be opposed to it. It would have to be a very low number, though. I don't necessarily trust the injury situation, and I don't know what else is going on. But at 30 years old with all that stuff, I mean, if we're talking like a very cheap 1-year prove-it deal or something, I would probably want to do it. And it's weird because I always, Christian Wilkins in the draft was seen as an unbelievably high character guy. So I don't want to act like he's a locker room problem. It sounded like there was kind of a joke or something that somebody took the wrong way. I don't know. Maybe they didn't take it the wrong way and that's the problem. I don't know. But I know, I've seen some videos of him on the field. He seems like a really funny guy, really cool, kind of lighthearted. Seems like a good dude, So I don't know. It's not exactly that piece that we're looking for, but it sure wouldn't hurt if he can come back and if his medicals check out okay. And maybe that's what teams are waiting on. And as soon as he can clear those medicals, everyone's going to pounce and he ends up making a ton of money, in which case we probably should be out. We don't need to spend a bunch of money on a 30-year-old. The Mason Crosby thing, just wanted to add because it sounds even crazier. The outright disrespect that they showed. Mason Crosby did an interview. I'm just going to go with this Go Long TV thing. Tyler Dunn does a little recap here. He says, Max Crosby has spoken. Highly encourage everyone to watch the latest podcast episode. Bare minimum, this 4-minute blah, blah, blah. If Crosby's play-by-play account is accurate, and we have no reason to believe he's inventing fiction, this is a horrible look for the Baltimore Ravens. Upon arrival, he was not greeted by GM Eric DeCosta, a hello that would have occurred before Crosby underwent an MRI with the Ravens medical staff. In fact, Crosby never saw the GM once in his entire 5-hour visit. Tinfoil hats are not required. We don't need Scooby-Doo and the Mystery Machine to connect the dots. All signs point to DeCosta and the Ravens bailing on Crosby before he even arrived for his physical. I mean, it's so, again, it's not hard to connect the dots here. If the plan was, we want this guy, it's going down, it's going to happen, you greet this freaking guy coming off the plane. You give his wife a hug. You say hello to the kids. You give him little gifts. You give him Raven stuff, all these different things. You're gushing over him. Come on in, man, and then the medicals are a formality. We're coming in, like it's a great big thing. You don't even want to make eye contact with the guy. For 5 hours, you're basically just ushering him in to do an MRI, and then you go have him sit in a cold room and wait for you to come in and give him the bad news. Sounds like you knew the bad news before he even got there. He goes on to say Trey Hendrickson was still available, thus supplying the Ravens an Ed Rush option without mortgaging 26 and 27 first-round picks. Perhaps they simply needed Crosby to go through his medical testing for a reason to bail. Sure is hard to believe DeCosta was gutted the trade fell through and DeCosta himself couldn't be bothered to see Crosby. The NFL is a cutthroat business. Technically, the Ravens didn't do anything illegal, but players, agents, and other GMs won't forget how DeCosta navigated this all. Pursuing Hendrickson while Crosby is in your building would be extremely low-class stuff. Your word should mean something in this business. Back when we spent 7 months talking to people around the NFL for our Bears series, I was stunned what other general managers said about Ryan Poles. Very rarely do you hear high-ranking execs rip colleagues to this degree. I'm not sure if we went over that or not. Well, let me save that for later. He put links to that. Poles is a freaking garbage GM. Cannot help but think this Crosby saga affects how people do business with DeCosta. Aren't the Ravens supposed to be the model franchise? I don't know about the model, but a model? Absolutely. This is what I've been saying. This is the problem. Who the heck is I can't remember the guy's name, but a Packers front office guy who's now very popular on social media. He talks a lot of stuff and all that. Real good dude. He just talked about this when he just talked about how when he came into the business, he wanted to make a name for himself. And so he comes in and he does all these cutthroat deals and he's getting good deals for the teams, but bad deals for the players. And he realized that ended up hurting him. And he realized that that's a bad thing to do. And ultimately, this is a very small ecosystem and it's a relationship business. The same guy that you screwed over yesterday, tomorrow you're going to have to try to do a deal with, right? That agent is going to remember you. those teams are going to remember you. Those GMs that you're trying to do deals with are going to remember you as a slimy scumbag. This is also why some of the conspiracies about like, oh, the NFL, they don't actually care about this, that, or the other. Even if they're slimy, scummy, just jagoffs. The problem is, if you want to do the job well, you have to do it in a way that is beneficial to the players, beneficial to other teams. If you're going out there trying to screw people over, I'm sorry, this isn't like this traveling salesman thing where you go out and rip everybody off and then move on to the next town. You stay in that town your entire career. Everybody knows you. You know everybody. It's the same people every year for decades. Even new GMs aren't new. It's guys that you worked with on a lower level before. Guys that maybe even came from your team that go somewhere else and say, I'm not working with that guy. I mean, this very clearly, if I'm ownership in the Ravens, I'm saying, look, we got to weather the storm for now. We have to do essentially to DaCosta what he did to Crosby. We got to find an out here. This guy has tarnished our entire reputation. What he did is unacceptable. And so when that happens, we're going to mention that very publicly, that we started looking in a new direction when that thing went down, because that's not how we do business here. Because you can't be this. You can't. This is, again, it is a great thing to be seen as a model franchise, as a place where people say, yes, I want you to go there. As an agent, I want to push you in that direction. If I'm another team and I'm looking to do a trade, I want to do it with the Ravens because they're a good team and they know how to do business. They know how to do things the right way. You're out there screwing over, not just some small little player for like $4 million when he's worth $6 million. You're screwing over one of 32 entire teams. Like you're going for a kingpin, bro. This is the Tom Brady. Like, you can make fun of the Ravens all you want, or the Raiders all you want. This is the Tom Brady franchise. That was a bad move, man. Aren't the Ravens supposed to be a model franchise, a city on a shining hill? This is all a reminder not to always believe what we're told at the podium. DaCosta's rationale sounds like nonsense in contrast to Crosby's version of events. So, anywho, bringing this, I mean, it's entertaining offseason drama to begin with, but bringing this back kind of full circle here to the Packers. This is what I've been talking about in terms of I don't want to become this. I'm seeing a lot of big-time franchises kind of making a bad name for themselves while some of these smaller teams are kind of looking a little respectable. I don't want the Packers to fall into that. I don't want the Bears to start becoming respectable, which I don't think they are. Poles is not very well liked. I don't think their head coach is very well liked. They might be successful, but not respectable, which is going to hurt them in the long run. The Vikings, I think, are a respected franchise, at least recently. I think the ownership is respected. Kwesi obviously was an idiot, but they're going to bring in somebody new. I think Kevin O'Connell is respected, whatever. I don't want to become a laughingstock. I don't want to become a team that does things the right way. We got to just pump the brakes. You know, I understand that the NFL is evolving and you have to stay out in front of things. You have to evolve as the NFL evolves. All that is true and correct and whatever. But you can't evolve so much that the identity that was born out through guys like Ron Wolf, through guys like Bob Harlan that we've been talking about a lot, those guys that built a model. You have to learn to adapt. This is the same as like scheme. Matt LaFleur's scheme is the same, at least under the same umbrella as Shanahan and McVay, et cetera, but they're all different. They're different, but they're still under the umbrella. You can't go so far as to become a different scheme, the Erhardt-Perkins scheme or something. Now you're outside of this West Coast scheme that you run. You're outside of your philosophy. You have to find a way to adapt what you do to the current system. Don't change what you do, adapt to what you do so that you're still doing what you do, but in a modern way. Because as soon as that disconnect happens and we suddenly no longer can see the ties between what we are and what we do and how things happened back in the 90s when this thing was established, now we're out floating around in space. Now we've disconnected. It's like from those movies when you're they're out trying to do a repair out on the spaceship or whatever, and they can't get connected because it's like, oh, I can't reach, blah, 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 blah. It's happened in like 90 movies. It's pretty overplayed or whatever. But it makes sense because it's a very scary thing, because if you lose contact, if you lose connection with that thing, you drift out into space and there's no saving you anymore. You have to stay tethered to the ship. The Packers have to remain tethered to the ship. And I think that they are. I'm just concerned a little bit that we're getting a little fast and loose. I'm a little concerned when we play with the cap. I understand that things are evolving and you got to do some things. But I want to make sure that we stay tethered to the Ron Wolf, Bob Harlan, Green Bay Packer way of doing business. And that's not only financial, but it's relational. It's not just how you, determine who the right player is. It's how you treat that player. It's not how you determine what teams to draft for. It's how you treat those teams and those agents. There's a way of doing business, and the Packers have always done business the right way. And something like this can take a franchise that has been revered for decades and turn them into a laughingstock, turn them into a team that does not want to nobody wants to do business with you. And that's why I say definitively, that person DaCosta needs to be fired, because your reputation in this business is more important than any one person. He needs to go. And you know what? He's probably not going to get another job. I mean, not a GM job. Somebody will hire him kind of to put him in a back room because he's still talented at what he does, but no way. And we cannot allow those things to happen. Okay. Why don't we take a break? There's no way we're getting through everything. This is taking a very long time, but I will try to, we'll skip a lot of the other stuff and we'll move over to some of the Packers stuff, and then we'll do our tight end thing. We'll take a break. We'll be right back. All right. First thing I wanted to highlight that I love, I'm a sucker for these workout videos and everything. I liked it when Rashawn did it. Terrence Parsons, who is, it's funny when certain guys come over and then, like Watson, his family is pretty well known. I haven't really seen his mom much or his brother a ton like I used to, but his dad is very, very much still out there. Anywho, Terrence Parsons, Micah Parsons' brother, very active. So he's a good follow because it's, kind of keeps you connected a little bit more than what Micah is going to put out there. But he said, Micah got them boys with the guru. Oh, I'm excited. And so there's a video here, and it shows him and a bunch of Green Bay Packers guys. Carl Brooks, Baron Sorrell, Colin Oliver. And so, I mean, this is about as good an education as you can get. I'm all in for this, guru that Terrence Parsons is talking about. You need to be with, in the offseason, elite pass rush coaches or whatever coaches are with your position. I believe that is Lance Dean. In fact, I can see on this video it says Lance 717 or whatever, but Lance Dean is his longtime personal trainer and pass rush specialist out of Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, which makes sense because I think he is a Pennsylvania guy. Dean is a high school coach at Central Dauphin East who runs private sessions focused on elite edge technique, hand placement, bend, footwork, explosion, and get off. Micah has been training with him since his pre-draft days, still brings him in every offseason. Specific clip shows Dean putting the Packers' young edge rushers through the same drills. Honestly, though, just being with Micah is the part that gets me excited. Working with the specialist is great. I'm sure there's a lot of elite specialists. In fact, this guy might not even be. It's probably his high school coach or something, you know what I mean? But working with Micah Parsons is the thing. It's working with a guy that sets the standard so high. If you're, I don't think Van Ness is out there, but who would even be, let's say Baron Sorrell. If Baron Sorrell is like the best edge rusher out there and he sets the bar there, it's not that hard to kind of reach there. And Baron Sorrell, he doesn't have to reach for anything. He's the best guy there. He does what he does. But when Micah is there and Micah's doing things that you physically cannot do, and that's the standard, and that's what you're trying to reach for, that's what you're trying to strive for, when you see somebody do it at another level, it's easy to kind of do a thing and be like, I think I got this. You know what I mean? Like, I'm pretty good at this. I think I can do this. When you watch Micah do it, you realize, I can't do this. I suck at this. I need to get way better at this. And so Micah can help you with the technique. The coach can help you with the technique. And I love this stuff. I've said it for years with Rodgers that I thought Rodgers should fly people out and they should be working together. And I think sometimes they did. I don't know. I know Love does that. It just seems obvious to me. You should be honing your craft in the off season. You know, if you want to take a vacation for a week or two, that's awesome, dude. You make a lot of money. You work hard. You should rest your body. You should do all that stuff. You should chill. Don't go out and gamble and get hammered and be stupid. But go relax. Go sit on a beach. Go chill somewhere. And if you can bring some boys with you, that's even better. You can practice some stuff. But when that's done, I don't care if it's a week, 2 weeks, take a freaking month, I guess. I don't know. You need to get back and you need to hit it, and you need to hit it hard. And that means with all of your boys, if possible. And so not only is it shout out to Micah Parsons, because it's awesome that he invited the guys to come with him, encourage them to come with, but good on Carl Brooks, good on Barron Sorrell, good on Colin Oliver. And I don't know the other, I think some of these guys are not on our team. Let me just look up these accounts here. Yeah, that's Chauncey Golston, Nick Carraway, and Aiden Huntington. Yeah, so as far as Packers guys, at least what he put on his story here or whatever, Colin Oliver, Barron Sorrell, and Carl Brooks, good on them to accept the invitation. And why would you not? You know what I mean? Like, I don't know what everybody else is doing, and I understand sometimes you pay a lot of money for these elite coaches, and so it's like, hey, you want to come out work with my coach? It's like, dude, I got a training staff, I got guys that work on my diet, my whatever. But man, if I'm a pass rusher and Micah Parsons says you want to come out and work, heck yeah, go for a day, go for a week. You can still work with your trainer. You need to get out there and work with Micah, man. You can't say no to something like that. Just like if you're a receiver, tight end, whatever, and Jordan Love says, hey, you want to get some work in? Abso-freaking-lutely. And I don't care if I'm paying $1 million for a coach, and that coach is like, you need to be here every day, bro, then you need to pack your stuff, and we're going out by Jordan and training out there. Because I'm not saying no to Jordan. That's my quarterback. So, on one hand, I give massive props to these guys. On the other hand, why is everybody not there? That's freaking unacceptable. But I just love to see that. And hopefully, especially guys like Oliver, because he's a very late round version of Micah Parsons, but it's still sort of a, hey, you want to learn how to use your body and use your skill set to be awesome at what you do? Let me show you how to do that. In other news, I know I indirectly referenced this. I don't know if I directly talked about this, but some pretty bad news in regard to Rasheed Walker. Not only did he not get as much money as we thought, it's even less than what we initially found out. The Panthers signing Packers Rasheed Walker to a 1-year deal that was announced on March 13th. Ari Mirov then on 18th says the Panthers deal with left tackle Rasheed Walker is a 1-year, $4 million deal. He can make more via incentives. Now, I don't know if the incentives, let me look into that. I don't think it's going to matter because it's not going to be that much. I'll just leave it alone. I don't know if incentives play into the average per year. If you get a $4 million deal and you hit all your incentives and you're a Pro Bowler and then obviously not an MVP, but you end up making $10 million. Is that $10 million for the comp or is it 4? Because that was I don't know. But just absolutely shocking how little money he made. I referenced this, I think I was Packernet After Dark, but the amount of guys, especially on our offensive line, that when it's a contract year, just say, you know what, I hate money, I hate football, I don't ever want to be good at anything, and I'm just going to crash out, is unbelievable. Josh Myers was a good player, contract year, worst year of his career. John Runyon was a good player. I think it was, a couple of years for both guys, but absolutely worst year of their career in their contract year. Rasheed Walker. I mean, I was concerned he was going to put us in a tough position of should he stay or should he go? He not only had the worst year of his career, but he got worse as the year went on. In the final games against like Chicago and whatnot, he was appalling to the point where he gets this is a guy that should have gotten a massive left tackle contract. You know what I mean? Free agency is when you get overpaid. It's when you get overpaid. And if he could have just hunkered down and been the guy he was for us for like 3 straight years, If he could have just done that, there would have been really no dispute. And he would have gotten a massive contract, and we would have gotten a giant comp pick. Instead, you know what we get? Frickin' nothing for him. Nothing. There is another thing I wanted to bring up, because I don't know if it plays into it. Let me grab this here. I didn't save it on my notes. We had mentioned this before, but I kind of slipped my mind. It was, in my mind, a smaller thing. I don't know. Panthers left tackle Rasheed Walker has been accepted into a pretrial diversion program that will clear a January gun charge from his record. Walker's record will be cleared if he avoids any additional arrests over the next 6 months. Walker was arrested at LaGuardia Airport on January 23, 2026, because he reportedly lacked the required credentials to travel with the firearm. Walker evidently did not know he was committing a crime when he presented the firearm for inspection. He's licensed to carry in the state of Wisconsin, which apparently led to Walker's confusion. I'm only bringing it up because I don't know that it didn't contribute. I'm guessing it's mostly his play. This, by the way, is the dumbest thing. If anybody is docking him pay or deciding he shouldn't be on the team because of something, this is the dumbest crap in the world. The fact that he brought the gun out for inspection proves he didn't know he was committing a crime. He's licensed to carry a firearm in the United States of America, where it's a constitutional right. And he didn't have a piece of paper in the state of New York, which I'm sure you require 75 documents and a full frickin' root canal to prove that you're allowed to carry a gun. Whatever. It was a simple frickin' mistake. Again, I bring it up because maybe it just doesn't look good when you're out there and all this stuff. And by the way, it's possible they didn't really know what was going to happen. This just happened 19 hours ago. Maybe they weren't aware of what was going to happen. Could he be suspended? All this stuff. I don't know. Maybe that kind of screwed him and screwed us as well. I still think it's completely stupid and it should have no impact. But again, if you think there's a chance he could get suspended, obviously that's going to play in. So that freaking sucks. So I'll take a second look at what we're going to be getting compensatory wise, but it is going to be less than we thought because of that. I mean, obviously Romeo and Malik have not changed anything, but just take Rasheed off the board and Igbare becomes kind of the next in line. I think Rasheed maybe cancels out St. Juice and then we get like a 6th or 7th or something for Igbare. I don't know. It's something like that. But again, I'll double check that at another time. The other thing that I, again, kind of alluded to but didn't directly say, Adam Schefter, Packers announced today, that was on the 17th, they will install Bob Harlan's name in a place of honor on Lambeau Field's northeast facade. The former Packers president and CEO's name will be unveiled on the facade during the 2026 season at a game that will be determined after the NFL schedule is finalized. So, obviously a man that needs to be honored for what he did. I think he deserves that and more, I mean, if they wanted to put up a freaking statue, I don't think that would be undeserved. But very exciting, and it'll be great to see that during that game, to see that get unveiled and everything. That'll be wonderful, and obviously a great honor for a great man that has given us, honestly, not only is he a great person, in the order of like a Bart Starr kind of a guy, just think of what he's given you personally. I mean, I don't know that I have this podcast just because of, all the joy that we had. I mean, if we still sucked in the 90s, would I be a massive Packer fan? Would you? If we were just bad, if we were just the Browns, 80s, 90s, 2000s, 2010s, and today, we're just a joke of a franchise that maybe isn't even in Green Bay. I mean, I don't have this. You don't have this. We might not have a franchise. There's no Aaron Rodgers. There's no Brett Favre. Not in Green Bay. The fact that we're sitting here having a conversation about how the Packers are a model franchise and not just this historic note like the Bears are. They're the freaking bunch of losers, but, they're historic. They're one of the first teams or whatever. So very, very cool. It's as I mentioned before, it's always kind of sad to think it's too bad that we wait until after they're gone to honor them in such a way. It's kind of like the Hall of Fame for a lot of guys. After they pass away, they get in. It's nice that they did that, but they're gone now. They didn't get the joy of that sort of congratulations. And I think having his name hanging in the stadium and more would have been nice to be able to unveil and offer to him while he was still alive. I think that was overdue, and I think the Packers need to consider that. If somebody is clearly deserving of something like that and they're alive, I think you should consider honoring them, especially if they're very up in age. I mean, come on. I think that's. I don't want to take it too far, but we legitimately need to start considering that. Because guys like Bob Harlan are deserving of having that honor and being able to be honored directly and be honored by 80,000 people in the stands, giving them the opportunity to say thank you as well. Just a thought. NFL draft note. Justin Felder. For any Green Bay followers, Green Bay's GM Brian Gutekunst here in Athens at Georgia's Pro Day. Interestingly enough, Mike McCarthy was also there, so there was some pictures of Gutekunst and McCarthy kind of yucking it up and having fun. I always like to take note of this because when you bring out the big guns, when you bring out the GM, you really want to get your eyes on something. Now, sometimes it's just a big program with a lot of guys there, but I think usually there's a little bit more to it than that. And so if you look at some of the prospects, first of all, Kristen Miller is a defensive tackle prospect that possibly could fall to the Packers where they sit. This is a 6'4", 310-pound guy who absolutely dominates as a run defender. He has good pass rush grades, but zero pass rush production, as I've said in the past, which is the case with pretty much all of these guys. Now, maybe that's usage because he is heavily used as an A-gap player. But it's very worthwhile to know that while at Georgia, and his snap counts went up every year, so his first year he only played 45 snaps, had a 61 run defense grade, whatever. Year 2, he jumps up to 200 snaps, has a 71 run defense grade, 66 pass rush. Then he jumps up to almost 400 snaps, 84 run defense grade, 71 pass rush grade. And then finally 440 snaps, 90 run defense grade, 70 pass rush grade. Now, at 6'4", 310 with good pass rush grades and 21 years old, by the way, he checks a lot of boxes. It's a need for the Packers. It's a big program. He's a young player. You could argue it's a premier position, assuming you're not just expecting him to be a pure run defender, although clearly that's going to be your primary focus here. Another guy is Zachariah Branch. He's a 5'10", 180 receiver. I wouldn't think that would be the direction, probably a second-round pick. That doesn't super make sense. Then you've got Dalen Everett, 6'1", 190 cornerback. He kind of had a big breakout 2024 season, took a step back in 2025, possibly with an injury. He had less snaps there. I'm not doing a massive deep dive here, but just kind of looking at it. Nothing super stands out, but he is, again, big program, just 21 years old, very young. He had at 20, I guess you would say, breakout season. Very good run defense. So he does have good tackling and run defense ability. At 6'1", 190, you would assume he's probably not a super tall, long arm guy, which I think is kind of a Gannon preference, but he's not short. So that's definitely somebody to keep an eye on. Oscar Delp is a tight end. Oh, by the way, Dalen Everett, 4th round projection. Oscar Delp, tight end, also a 4th round projection. 6'5", 245. You can kind of anticipate he's probably more of a receiving threat. 22 years old, still, again, relatively young. He does not grade out super well and doesn't have a ton of production, but somebody to keep an eye on, I suppose. Again, 4th round projection. He's obviously expected to be somewhat impressive. And then, obviously, there's a ton of guys there, but as far as projected to be drafted, Micah Morris would be the only other one. He's an interior offensive lineman and a massive human being at 6'4", 330. Kind of fits the mold of what the Packers seem to want to do. And I'll tell you what, PFF loves the guy. And for playing at a big program, having the stats that he hasn't played any center, but he has played left and right guard. He's primarily, so 2 years at Georgia. His first 2 years, he didn't play a ton, but still graded out well. 74 pass blocking grades in both years. 2023, he gets a start as a left guard, also played a little left tackle. 75 run blocking, 77 pass blocking. 2024, he plays mostly right guard with about 100 snaps at left guard, 87 pass blocking grade. Final year, 2025, 84 pass blocking grade as a left guard. So, again, mostly left guard, played most of the 2024 season at right guard. That was actually his best pass blocking season. His run blocking has never been bad. Mid-60s, and then in 2023, it was actually a 75. So a solid run blocker, an elite pass blocker at guard, at the size the Packers seem to love now, 330 pounds. He's a freaking giant of a human being. And again, at a big program. He's not doing this against small school guys. His best pass blocking games were against Ole Miss in a bowl game, by the way, 86 grade. Florida, 85 grade. Alabama, 85 grade. Alabama in a bowl game, 84 grade. Mississippi State, 84 grade. Texas, 84. Those are like all of his best games came against the top teams and in the biggest games. So I definitely would not rule that out. A couple other the potential UDFAs: Brett Thorson, the punter; Colby Young, wide receiver; Bo Gardner, long snapper; Dylan Bell, wide receiver; Noah Thomas, wide receiver; and Zion Branch, safety. All right, let's take our break. We'll come back and have a little chat about our tight end situation. All right, so for those that are unaware of what we're talking about here, first of all, go back and check those out. We're kind of doing sort of a State of the Union, I guess you could say, or just trying to make sure that we're up to date on what the heck is going on in the world, so that we're not overlooking anything and looking at the depth of the players and not missing any players, et cetera, et cetera. Today, we're just going to do tight end. Obviously, the top of that list is Tucker Kraft. He is the undisputed top tight end on the team. He is arguably, or maybe not even that arguably, Jordan's top target, especially now that Dobbs is gone. I guess you could probably say undisputed top favorite target on the entire team. The situation we're in with him is very similar to Christian Watson. He's getting a contract. That's not disputed. It's just a question of when and how much. And I think that there is some room for discussion, because I think a lot of Packer fans would say he is and always has been this elite, top tight end, whatever. I don't think that's necessarily true. I think he was a little bit overhyped for a while. And then this past year was his big breakout year where he demonstrated, yes, he actually is, or at least can be, one of those top 5 tight end type of prospects. The problem is, just like with everything else, and everyone else on this freaking team, he ends up tearing his ACL. We don't get to see a full season of domination, and we don't know what's coming back the other side. So we have one dominant season that ended with an ACL tear, and we don't know what that means about his projected future. So, similar to Watson, you take the top number and you say, how much of a discount are we getting for this? How much lower than the top is he going to get? Are they just going to say we are comfortable with it? We know he's a top guy and we're going to pay him? I don't know. But some of the specific details here: season ended with a torn ACL in his right knee on November 2nd, 2025 versus the Panthers week 9. There was a minor meniscus LCL damage, but no major complications from surgery. As of January 2026, Kraft said he's targeting a full return by week 1 of 2026 and wants to be bulletproof. He's been described as ahead of schedule, which, by the way, every human being on planet Earth that has ever had a torn ACL or any other kind of injury has been described as ahead of schedule. It's just a part of the thing, and as far as I know, it means absolutely nothing, but it's nice to hear, I guess. Then, let's see. Then in February, when Brian Gutekunst spoke, he confirmed that the team had already reached out to Kraft's rep, in this case, Jack Bechta of JB Sports, and he said that extension talks would happen in the near future. Quote, obviously, he's a real important part of this football team. We would certainly like to have him around, but that'll be something we work through with his people, and we'll kind of see what's best for us and best for them. He also said certainly the impact that he has on our football team, not only as a player but as a leader, is very important to us. We've obviously already been in contact with him and just let him know let him know how we feel, and we'll kind of see where it goes. That's pretty standard. We're in negotiations, and I don't want to say anything that's going to hamper my negotiations. You know what I mean? Like, he's an undisputed part of this team, and he's deserving of a major contract. And that's all just going to be used against you in contract negotiations. So you kind of just leave it at like, yeah, he's fine. We like him. He's a leader. He's a good guy. We'll see. We'll see. You phrase it as we'll see because walking away from the table has to be something that's left on the table. Not that they would ever do that, but, that's why it sounds like it sounds. Multiple reports called Kraft a top 3 extension priority alongside Watson and Wyatt. There's some debate about timing and whatnot. As of mid-March, some insiders still said the Packers are working on extension for Kraft and Watson. No deal has been announced or reported so far. Analyst projections of about a 4-year, $60 to $74 million range, which would put him at 15 to 18.25 per year, potentially with a very large signing bonus, which is pretty standard for a lot of teams, including the Packers. Pre-injury projections were a little bit higher. He was expected to pass Trey McBride's 4-year, $77 million. After the injury, some people kind of see maybe he might get a bargain kind of thing, like I said. Comparable to like a 4-year, $60 million with a $30 million signing bonus kind of thing. So again, as far as Kraft is concerned, it's not if, it's when, and it's also how much, and that'll be kind of interesting. I think the team and the agent and everybody else knows that he is indispensable. It's kind of just a question, and for both of them, I genuinely think it might be difficult and maybe even kind of ugly negotiation, which is why maybe you're seeing this kind of terminology from Brian Gutekunst being a little bit more like, we'll see, as opposed to whatever, because there might be some pretty strong disagreements about the pay and whatnot. And I think for both of these, they might be kind of ugly disputes, because obviously as an agent and as a player and as a representative, if you're Watson or if you're Tucker Kraft, the idea that I'm going to give you a discount because I got hurt, no, screw you. And I have a feeling that's going to be the initial discussion, is the Packers come in real low and the players come in and say, no, I want top money. Bull crap. And that's, it might take some doing to kind of work through that. But ultimately, a deal will get done and Tucker Kraft will be locked up for a long time. And hopefully that works to our advantage, unlike everybody else. After that, you got Luke Musgrave, and this is probably the most interesting actual discussion here in terms of what do we do, and also being kind of open-minded about what the Packers might be thinking here. I have been kind of operating with the assumption that, we'll probably move in a new direction. I don't know that that's necessarily the situation, though. I think you could make a case that he's very similar to a lot of these guys where, when healthy, he actually looks quite good, and he shouldn't be just discarded. You're not going to pay him a mega contract, obviously, but again, you could certainly make the case that if we believe he's going to stay healthy, he's shown us enough that we can offer him some kind of a contract, a smaller tight end contract to stick around. First of all, some of the injury stuff. He had a grade 3 MCL tear in 2022 in college. Now, this was kind of tricky because his breakout year was 2022, and it was 2 games. Obviously, they liked his attributes up until that point, but it looked like he was going to have just an elite year. Grade 3 MCL tear. 2023, played 11 games, had a left ankle sprain midseason around October, then had a go ahead.
Someone is at the front door.
Then had a grade 4 lacerated kidney November 9th, 2023, week 11 versus the Chargers. He toughed it out somehow, actually finished the game, but was hospitalized, placed on IR. 2024. So remember, 2022 missed basically the entire season. 2023 in November is put on IR because he had a lacerated kidney. 2024 played just 7 games because of a torn ligament in his left ankle. That was in week 4. Also played through that because he's tough as nails, but still consulted an ankle specialist, Dr. Robert Anderson, required surgery to repair the torn ligament, placed on IR in October, missed 10 games. 2025 is the season that he actually played through, so it's a good sign. He also had some really impressive moments. I wouldn't say he had an impressive season, but there were some moments where you kind of started to see some better hands, some better body control, some real, especially after Tucker went out, you started to see him start to shine. Around week 12 is when you can see like his shining moments were week 12 through week 16 is when he was really featured and really started to show off a little bit. Now still, even with that, even with 2025 kind of being his big selling point, at the end of the day, he has 72 receptions over 3 seasons. 72 receptions, 724 yards, 2 touchdowns. He has not had a touchdown since 2023. So, he's just 25. He had his first full healthy season this past year. He, again, kind of showed a little bit. I mean, he had, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 straight games with a reception, which, is kind of impressive for him, I guess. Again, you could make the case, not that you don't, maybe draft somebody and see if you can kind of fill that role with somebody else and let somebody compete, but the idea that he needs to be cut and booted and banned from the state of Wisconsin, go ahead,
is at the front door.
I don't know that we need to go necessarily that far. Maybe he's just one of those guys that's okay as a number 2. We'll see if we can continue to work with the guy. And, we'll dabble a little bit here and there with some athletic receiving type tight ends and see what happens. I don't know. Again, the goal here is to keep as open mind as possible. He is in the final year of his deal here in Green Bay. I would not necessarily expect, again, open mind and all that, but if I had to give my best guess, he's not getting a contract this year. I think that this will be carried over into next year. And it's possible, if he has a very, very good season, that the Packers offer him a contract to stay. Maybe it's a little bit more of a longer-term deal. I don't know. It's also possible that he continues to be the same guy. And if we don't draft anyone or have any real prospects, that we bring him back on a very small contract. Whether that's immediately prior to free agency, or maybe they let him test free agency and end up bringing him back, or whatever the case may be, on a very minor, league minimum kind of a thing or whatever. Or what I think a lot of people expect is that he will probably just be let to walk next year, pending again any kind of a great season this year. I think the Packers would like to give themselves that level of freedom to be able to let him walk out the door. So we'll see. We'll see if any kind of a contract happens. I'm not anticipating anything, but I think Luke Musgrave has one final year. If he can stay healthy 2 years in a row, and if he can take a significant step as the speed receiving threat that the Packers wanted him to be, we can maybe have a discussion about a smaller contract for Musgrave. Otherwise, more than likely he's leaving. Otherwise, maybe back on a small contract. But in the meantime, I think it's still prudent to have discussions about these types of tight ends, the athletic receiving, seam splitting type of tight ends in the draft. And by the way, there's a lot of talk about it being a pretty decent tight end class. Everyone's whining about it being the weakest class, but those are people just talking about the top end. We'll talk about that in a little bit as well, because that actually works to our benefit. The fact that there's like no first round picks anyways. So even if we had a first-round pick, we wouldn't have a first-round pick. We would just have an earlier second-round pick, essentially. So when people say it's a bad draft class, that's all they mean. There's just not a lot of true top-end guys. Who gives a crap? There's 7 rounds and all of undrafted free agency to talk about, and you're going to piss and moan because instead of having like 25 first-round picks, there's 11. And we're just going to ignore the massive amount of talent that there is from, like pick 15 to 50. The amount of, running backs or tight ends in the mid-rounds or what, you know what I mean? Like there's a lot to like about every draft class. But man, if there's not a lot of like wide receivers, quarterbacks, and first-round talent, everybody just pisses and moans about everything. It's amazing that these are like actual NFL draft people. It's like, it's funny that you spend your entire life doing the draft and you only care about the first 20 picks. That's kind of freaking embarrassing. A terrible class. Terrible. No, it's not. What about X, Y, and Z? Well, yeah, but there's not like 5 elite quarterbacks in the first round, bro. Cool. Okay. Then behind him, we obviously have some of the, smaller prospects. Josh Whyle. He's one of those guys. We always have these guys. Sort of that third tight end or whatever that Matt LaFleur just really shows a liking toward. And I think Josh Whyle right now is that guy. We just re-signed him in March to a 1-year, $2 million deal. Every expectation he makes the 53-man roster. There's not a lot to add here. I don't think that he's going to be much more than what he is. I think he's going to kind of be that number 3 potential. I mean, it's kind of like Brooks in a way, like as far as running back. He's kind of the number 3 that may end up by default becoming the number 2 if we move on from Musgrave and still like this guy and don't find somebody to replace him. Kind of by default, he may just be moving up the ladder. But he's just 25 years old, and again, I think the Packers like him. We got 24-year-old Drake Dabney. 2025, he was a UDFA out of Dartmouth. Another developmental guy that the Packers are working on, just 24 years old. Messiah Swinson, he's only 23. Another guy that's been around a little bit. 2025 future street free agent signing from Arizona State. Big body, blocking type of prospect. He's just kind of possibly battling for a practice squad spot, or, again, depending on how the tight end room looks, potentially could make the roster if he is one of our better blocking prospects. And then as far as a little bit more unknown, McAllen Castles, who is 24 years old, signed as a street free agent, futures edition in 2025. Another guy that's just going to kind of battle for the bottom of the roster type of thing. So I think as far as tight end goes, we've got Tucker, who's going to get paid. It's just a question of when and how much, et cetera, et cetera. Musgrave is 2, but he's also looking like a short-term 2, and he's probably on his way out the door pending some kind of a big year, which I'm rooting for. I mean, it's very rare to find a guy with his abilities athletically, and if he can tap into it, we're in for something special, but if not, then it is what it is. We tried. I think Musgrave and Kraft kind of represent exactly the dynamic that a lot of people are talking about as far as, the athletic freak versus the good football player. And sometimes the freaks work out. Christian Watson has worked out. I'm not going to pretend they never work out. But, score 1 for the please just go find good football players crowd, which I will say I've occupied that space quite a bit. After that, I think you have Wiley as your 3/potential 2 if Musgrave leaves at some point, pending any kind of a replacement. And then a bunch of other guys, Dabney and Swinson and Castles, that'll kind of battle out for whatever positions are there. Then the only remaining question is the draft and kind of looking at, and at some point we'll kind of dive into some of these things. I think that's a good thing about doing this first. Once you have a better understanding of what exactly we have, what exactly we don't, and all that kind of stuff, you can hone in a little bit more on not just generally tight end or generally defensive tackle or generally corner, but specifically this type. The sort of long arm boundary guy for corner, the big 330-pound nose tackle at defensive tackle, the, athletic move tight end, the receiving tight end. Luke Musgrave replacement specifically type of thing. It'll help when we eventually get to the point of, okay, let's look at this draft class. Let's break down specifically some targets that maybe would make sense for us. But anywho, I'm going to leave it at that. You all have a good rest of your day. I'll talk to you tonight, tomorrow, whatever. Have a good one. Bye-bye.